Welcome to all the magical beings. My name is Solasta, they, them pronouns. Thank you so much for being here. We are starting the panel, and right now I'm actually going to kick it off to our co-host and amazing magical person, Pita.
Hello. So my name's Pita, pronouns he, they. Before we kind of get into the panel, I just kind of wanted to do a little introduction on the Rainbow Connection Club. So obviously newly formed club. But we're a whole bunch of rainbow aligned, rainbow valued people. And one of our biggest things is our identities and what we bring, and especially when it comes to being gender expansive, just an expansive in general, expansive in terms of going into lanes that we've been told that we're not allowed to occupy, having dreams that aren't traditionally or conventionally allowed for what has been told by us. See, those papers are rainbow aligned. They want to go and they want to expand and be free and occupy other spaces where paper hasn't been before. So there'll be newly added members to the club. But I just wanted to welcome and introduce the Rainbow Connection Club. A lot of multi-hyphenated, talented creatives. With all of these intersecting identities that makes Rainbow Connection Club the beauty that it is, in the diversity and the valuing of that, and being able to express and share the rainbow. Okay.
Thank you, Pita. Yes, thank you all for being here. A lot of what we hope to accomplish with this panel is just to provide some historical context. As you know, many of us have been involved in the quote unquote dance community. What does that mean? Over different periods of time, and very predominantly cis spaces, very heteronormative spaces, and due to just that ongoing reality, a lot of queer people, a lot of gender expansive people, a lot of neurodiverse people not being able to have their needs met in order to dance. And in order to be free, and in order to connect with the music and be in community, and we've all been so isolated from each other throughout the pandemic, in addition to fragmentation kind of happening prior to the pandemic through various dance quote-unquote community events. And now that we're very slowly, very intentionally trying to find our way back to each other and build new relationships, doing so in a way that really centers the needs of folks at the margins. So that's a lot of what our intention here today is, which can kind of, we'll be talking about the shadow. And when the shadow doesn't get spoken or bring into the light, then it kind of comes out as is like monsters or demons, and then we're not harm happens, and really just missed opportunity is really what is missed. And so not just being in the shadow, but also really orienting towards the light and hearing the incredible experiences of everyone on this panel, and what they've learned through their relationship to music, what they've learned through their relationship to dance, what they learned through their relationship to being in community, because it is a whole thing. It brings up a lot. So that's just our intention for today. So we're just gonna go for it. So please give them your presence and your love. It's such a blessing having all these magical humans here today. Thank you. Yes. So very important to resource ourselves, especially when we're going into shadowy places, into the unknown, into place when there's unknown, I get anxious. So we're gonna start with orienting towards what feels good, what is resourcing towards us, what has supported us, especially through these past 2 years, because it has been a lot and very complex. So my first question to Karla and Amber and John is what has dance given to you? Yes.
I could go. Hey, everyone. I would say dance has given me everything, just to be honest. For folks who knew me beforehand, before dance entered my life, I was a really, really shy kid. Didn't really speak up much. I was always creative. I was into drawing and illustration and doing like arts and crafts thing. But I was also someone who was very physical. Like I was into sports and everything. And dance has given me so much. It's hard to even like unfold that and unpack it. It's given me a voice. It's helped me discover my power. It's helped me to connect something that's just beyond my physical self, but also to the people who have come before me, whether it's blood related or the pioneers who created a lot of the art forms that I've invested in. And it's given me family. It's given me so many people who have come into my life, people in this, in this space and beyond. And it's given me also an opportunity to connect with folks outside of even language barriers. And this comes from my travels. And it gave me a space to like really connect with folks, even if we don't even speak the same language. And that's always been something that I've held really close to myself and really hold it in the greatest care and love possible. So dance has always been there, and it will continue to be there even if I physically I'm not able to do it anymore, like in the future. So yeah.
Cool. Hey, y'all. I'm Leezy, they, them pronouns. So, what dance has given me, I think the biggest thing I want to name is it's been a vehicle for healing for me. Um, I think some dancers can probably relate, but I really didn't grow up around dance. I actually grew up really disconnected from it and really sheltered from it. There were some cousins who would party dance, and I would always be like, damn, I want to do that. But I always was really disconnected from my body. And that's a big part of being a trauma survivor. And honestly, show me a queer person who doesn't have trauma, you know? Life is already inherently traumatizing, and is even more so for queer folks. And I'm not just talking about capital T trauma, like single events. I'm talking about those ongoing environments where you have to feel helpless and alone and afraid all the time. Um, so for me personally, if you know like the ACEs scores checklist thing, like adverse childhood experiences, I check off like pretty much all of them. So what that did for me was I was really, really disconnected from my body. And I was lucky to find dance in high school, and that started helping me learn how disconnected I was. And through all the training, so much more goodness has come. Very similar to Karla, it's given me community, chosen family, an opportunity to be a part of something much bigger than myself, like ballroom, which is such a huge and incredible legacy. An opportunity to be seen, which was huge and really scary for parts of me. Dance is simultaneously triggering and also gives me opportunities to heal what gets triggered. It's kind of masochistic, but whenever I push through, there's always so much learning and insight I gain. And it's given me an opportunity to connect, to share and express, to feel like there's lots of places I can go in the world now where I'm gonna feel held. Um, God, I can go on and on, but mainly for me, it's been a vehicle for embodiment and healing.
Ooh, okay. Hi, Hi, everyone. I'm Amber. Pronouns are she, they, and we. And I mean, everything that was shared, I'm like, yes, we're a family, because I definitely experienced all those things. And growing up extremely painfully shy, like really painfully shy to the point where I would cry if somebody even looked at me. It's really intense. And when I discovered dance for the first time on stage, I remember my mom had taken me to this production. It was like all Black youth on stage, and they were doing musical theater. And I just sat up and I was like, Mom, they look like me. Oh my gosh, how are they doing that? They're my age and they're up there like performing in front of all these people. And I just felt so inspired from that moment on. And I knew that, like, despite my shyness and despite the trauma that I had experienced as a child, like, I actually could have a voice and I could express myself in ways that I didn't know how to yet. And so in the process of going to school and taking classes in school, doing theater, it really activated a part of me that was kind of like an alter ego, but it was also a part of me that was like, that was me at the same time. It was a part of me that needed to be expressed, but I didn't have that outlet. So dance really provided that for me. And in expressing myself through movement, it also healed my body in a lot of ways. I could feel how strong my body was, despite what I had went through as a child or throughout my life. I could see how resilient and strong my body was, and how my body could tell stories, and how I could use that to transmute as well. Like, I didn't have to hold on to that. It didn't have to be like built up and pent up inside of me. I could actually release it through movement as well. So that's, I think, for me, like the main thing. And, you know, of course, there's like community, meeting people who, ancestral community, right? There's like the shared lineage of people that you don't even have to like say it. You can just have an exchange and be like, okay, you my peoples, you know, like we must be from the same area. We must be from the same tribe. And really gaining like family and community in that way. And just having a passion. My mom really instilled that in me, to have a passion in life, and how incredibly healing and powerful that is. And to have something that I have been into since kindergarten up until now in my late 30s, I'm so grateful for that. I'm really, really grateful, so.
Wow. I am so much more in my body than I was right when we started this. I am just so, yes, thank you for all of your shares. I'm curious for Liz, especially with your, relationship to music and being a DJ, what has music given to you?
I'm Liz. I use she, they pronouns. And I've always, I kind of identify with what these folks have been saying too. I'm really shy, and I feel like through DJing and through music is kind of how I've felt at home, and like I've found like a community in a way when I felt like I didn't actually have a physical community. And when I kind of started listening to house music and understanding more of like the queer and Black and brown history of it, it already made me, music makes me like feel something. And I think that's kind of why I started DJing, is because I want to share that feeling and also share kind of a bit of me while I'm doing that. And this is that outlet that I've chosen to do that. And the community that it's now given me, that I now have, is amazing. And I'm so grateful for how do I put it? I guess I'm really grateful for the way that like I can show up for my community in this way while I'm still able to show up for myself. And my stage name is Liz Videnda, and not a lot of people know what Videnda means. It's actually Latin for to be seen or to be heard. And I feel like this is kind of one of the only stages that I can do that, and I'm so happy that we have a huge community of dancers, not just DJs, but we can all do that at the same time, and I think that's really awesome.
Yes, yes. I was wondering, follow-up question, why did you start Recess, which is, well, I'll let you just take it away.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, I started a monthly kind of dance party recently. It's called Recess. And we started this in October of last year. And it's been so amazing and really healing for me. I started Recess, just, the name of it kind of tells you the feeling that I feel when I listen to music. It's really freeing. And I feel like that same feeling that you had when you were a kid and you went to recess and you got to just kind of like be free and run around and do what you wanted. That's kind of like the feeling I wanted to capture at that event. And at that event, I've met so many people that, like Solasta, for example, that, again, have just made me really feel seen. And it's not just about me. It's about creating a space where people that feel like me, that feel like, they can't go to normal queer parties or queer spaces even, and feel like they can just be free and like let go and not really like care who's around or care who's looking at them dance. It's really awesome.
Yes, thank you. Karla and John, actually backing it up, Amber, I was wondering if, just like bam, 60 seconds, we're on the news. What is your final answer? No, this is very dramatic. Woo! Going a little bit more into the light and shadow area, I'm wondering if you could share about, your kind of thought process and experience when you are deciding whether or not you're going to be going out and sharing space and community, whether or not you're going to go to the club, whether or not you're going to go to a battle, whether or not you're going to go to, any music and dance area, and why you might go say like, yes, I'm going to go, or not going to go as a starting off point. Just what is going through your mind when you're deciding about going to an event? Thank you for the long question, Solasta.
Yes. So I think the first thing that comes to mind is just overall safety. And I have been more lately been attending like more outdoor events, more public events, and they're great. And what comes with that are people who may not be a part of like the direct maybe dance or music community. And I've experienced, and as well as some of my friends have experienced, some harm and some wanted attention and maybe physical touch. And so those things, it's a thing right now, I'm noticing a lot. So that's something that I think about really intensely before I attend an event. There are events that I go to still that I may have experienced something at, where I've had to actually set into place like, okay, you are my buddy for this, for today. Like, we're gonna look out for each other. If something goes down, you know to come to me, I know to come to you. And so I'm actually in the process of, and Solasta and I have been talking about this a lot, getting like a squad of people together who can like look out for each other, like community members, like a safety team or something. It's in process, so just stay tuned for that because that's really important to me. But yeah, I would say that's like the number one thing. And then the number two thing is I have found myself over the past few years kind of, I don't want to say forcing myself, but really making it a point to attend certain battles and events as a Black queer woman, particularly if it's like a hip hop dance battle or, any kind of like Afro-diasporic dance event. It feels really, really important to like represent because there are not many of us. I can probably name on one hand like who I see at these events. And so for me, it's like, I feel like I'm often in this position where I'm kind of like one of the few in certain settings when it comes to like African diasporic events or anything. So I really find that to be super duper important to attend. And also while holding the fact that there are some events where I don't actually feel welcome or safe, right? Or I don't feel acknowledged in a certain way, and there's some events that are like really like testosterone heavy and very aggressive and hella competitive, which no shade in like competition at all, but I think for me it can be a little bit intense sometimes. I know like when I enter a battle, a lot of times what I try to tell myself in my head and in my heart is that this is an opportunity for me to share who I am and showcase who I am and exchange with other folks. And hey, if I get to the next round, woohoo, awesome, you know, but for me it's not so much of a competitive energy. So those are the things I have to kind of weigh, like, do I want to be around this super intense competitive energy today? Do I want to maybe risk being, you know, someone coming at me sideways, you know, maybe not intentionally, maybe intentionally. And these are things that happen a lot in our own communities as well. So I think it's a matter of like deciding if you want to attend, and also deciding at what point do I use my voice to speak to these things, and what kind of change can I maybe help implement, or who can I speak to about like just creating a safer space for all.
Thank you so much. I just in hearing you speak, especially about the like competition part, because with everything, I personally feel like there's, you know, in balance energy and out of balance energy. And I feel like competition as its own like thing can have an out of balance energy and an imbalance energy. And the imbalance energy, for me, I experience it as like, oh wow, like I'm exchanging with someone. Like it's an incredible, creative kind of like, it challenges you. That's something I often hear dancers speak about, is like, oh, it helps me, like it challenges me in some kind of way that then, you know, when we're going through a block or boundary and we come out of it, we're a little bit stronger, maybe a little bit more expansive. So it's in balance or in the light in that way. And then the ways I've experienced it as out of balance personally is like, one, myself, my own brain, like beating itself up either like before or afterwards because of, you know, my own trauma history with compare and despair. I don't know if any of you compare and despair out there, but it happens a lot. But with that like piece of trauma, I often think about the fight part, like the fight response of the nervous system, and how we're in these highly activated spaces because we want to do well, you know, and also there's a lot of eyes on us. It doesn't matter how many times you've been dancing. I've been dancing since I was 3. I still get a little activated. Like, come on, it's a little stressful. So you're in this environment that is inherently like putting parts of our brain alive and on alert, and then folks are coming in with different levels of self-awareness and different levels of access to be able to work through issues such as therapy, because we all know therapy is not accessible. As a therapist, that is my conclusion. So point being that fight part, I feel like that environment is the perfect environment for it to come out, but then be kind of gaslit and shielded as this is just competition. And if you can't compete, then like don't bother to come. But it's like there's a difference between competition and like not having. I feel like I meet people's fight part in their embodiment as they're dancing in a battle, and it is a different thing, and it is, for me, feels like an energetic assault. Even if that person hasn't physically touched me, it has activated my nervous system. It has like put me in a place, whether I'm consciously thinking this is activating me right now, I'm probably more like, oh, I gotta get my shit together, like, you know. So I just really appreciate you naming the vibe, and how, like, at least I have noticed that it's very easy for organizers and for attenders of events to not have discernment between like what is, you know, healthy competition or an exchange, like aggressiveness versus like an energetic assault on someone. And you're like it's a different vibe through eye contact, so anyways, I got activated, even just thinking about that, because I also don't, that's a decision process for me when I'm going to an event or not. another one I wanted to speak on what you were sharing about like the spaces of, sorry, my brain just blurped for a second. Going to outdoor spaces, because Amber and I, and I'm sure many people here whose faces I see, have been going to like outdoor parties because we haven't really had many options, / no mirror movement style. We love being outside. I love being outside. But I have also experienced negative interactions, not just even from people who aren't a part of an established community. I have experienced a lot of microaggressions as it relates to my gender expression, which includes my name, my pronouns, how I dress, regularly by people that I know, typically like cis people, but it's just so kind of noticing how in these community spaces, I feel like some things that often happen in community are like, if there's the bad person, or they're outside the community, so that's why this happened, rather than being like, no, this is happening within our community by people in it, and that doesn't make them evil or bad. It just means that this is happening, and we should talk to the people who are having these experiences and ask, what would make them feel safe. I remember we had very late conversations with an outdoor event area about issues of gender, and one question that came up was like, oh, but like pronouns, like people don't need to know that, or like asking for people's pronouns, or like that's just like their own business. And I was like, ooh, no. So just a lot more like education and like culture building in these other spaces that also has to do with who people are, not assuming where they come from, not assuming, even what kind of dance style they do, not assuming their gender, things like that is a big determinant for me as well, and whether I go out to spaces. So, thank you. Thank you for listening to my response. I am wondering, Farrah, because you have also been very present in a variety of dance spaces, from the classroom to community events. I'm wondering if you could speak to the difference that you experience relationally, like how your experience of being in relationship with other people or this community, like a class community, your students, versus when you go to a community event, whether that's like a one-off party or maybe it's a party that happens every month or every week. Could you speak about how those two different spaces are different with the relationships?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Farrah. Pronouns are she, her. My brain is spinning from all the juicy conversation already, so I gotta like
take your time.
Take a second.
Everyone, take your time, take a breath, maybe feel your feet on the ground.
Yeah. So as Solasta said, I currently and have for a long time been dancing mostly in classroom spaces. So I feel like I've been in my educator role for a long time, and that's been anywhere from K through 12 in the elementary schools, in the university setting, out like teaching open accessible classes. And I also am very shy. Sounds like everyone on this panel is hella shy. To the point where I think I need to go out more to more public events. But the thing I've been ruminating on recently is I think the reason why I love the teaching space or the classroom space or just like any educational setting or a repetitive setting is the opportunity to build relationships with the people who are there and to do it over a period of time. So I love like having the same group of students for months, years, like lifetime, because if something does happen in the classroom, let's say like as an educator right now, we can spend time in there being like, pause, something happened, let's talk about it. And maybe that's during class, maybe that's after class is over, checking in with people one-on-one, and I think it is a little bit easier in a class setting to have that, because students are also going in knowing that they're there to learn something. And I feel like I would love to see that more out in the open, people knowing that, like, or people coming in with the intention of being open to learning something, instead of just coming in and be like, I'm gonna show my thing and leave. Or, you know, like, I'm gonna do my thing and leave and that's it. So this idea of relationship building over time. And the thing that I notice is, if something happens at an event, the follow-up is hard to catch, because it can be like the next time that event is held by the same people, it could be an entirely group of different people. The people in the situation that happened the last time may not be there the second time, and like, how do you catch the moment to be like, hey, gotta like flush this thing out so that everybody feels good about coming back in again. And I don't really have an answer other than how? Yeah, I don't have an answer, just something I've been thinking about a lot.
Yes, thank you so much, Farrah. Like, hearing you speak makes me think about like when people stop showing up to events, and some pretty significant relational ruptures with people who typically have more power than I do, and and then kind of like being like, oh, well, I guess I gotta find new community. You know, rather than an opportunity for repair, and not even just between that person and the other, but like as a community. So I know for myself, when in those moments where I kind of was like, we're gonna move up to Marin into the woods and like probably not come to events for a while. And then the pandemic happened. So that was just kind of personal aside. I noticed that not many, not even just in moving, but there was actually, I had my own experiences of being assaulted at a like freestyle party in San Francisco in the community, and then that person stalking me, and the person who introduced me to them was a, you know, mentor figure, and there was no follow-up or protection by that mentor figure, and there's still no relationship there, so that makes me really sad. But the point that I bring that up is that parts of that story were publicly available, and no one followed up with me after, oh, like, why did you leave that group chat? And they like came up in a one-on-one conversation. Oh yeah, like, I noticed you left and I thought that was weird. And I'm like, why did you not reach out when you notice someone leave? Because I notice people leaving, and I have many conversations with folks who are here about their decision to leave or to not come back, or not feeling safe at certain events or with certain people, or et cetera, et cetera. And it makes me really sad. It makes me sad that it's not just on the event organizers, you know, community checking in with one another when we notice things. Because I know I've done this as well, of like noticing someone leave and not being like oh, I wonder why that is. They're probably just busy. I think that's, you know, because people are hella busy. It is wild times, and it will be for a long time. So, yeah, it makes me a little sad that folks don't check on each other, even though I know that I have done that as well, for fear of like maybe invading their privacy, or, you know, they're just busy. So I think a hope that I hold for myself in building community with folks is a practice of checking in, whether that's like at the event, what Amber was kind of sharing around like having a buddy and be like, are you good? I'm good. Like, you know, just having someone to go to, but then also when we notice things happening, checking in with each other more, because I feel like a lot of the sting of those experiences can be taken out of the body a little with a little less remnant than when that person just ends up holding it by themselves and no one really knowing. And I know for myself, I haven't shared many personal stories with people because I don't want to seem like I'm canceling someone or that I'm like, just any kind of negative light. That's one of the symptoms of being a survivor when harm is done in whatever kind of form that is. So that's just what came up for me in hearing you speak, Farrah. So thank you for that. Karla and John, I was wondering if you could give an example of when community felt medicinal. It's giving you restoration energy, nourishing energy, inspiring energy, connection, love, any of those expressions. It felt medicinal rather than toxic, overwhelming, scary, like it's intrusive thoughts happening, like those kinds of toxicities, feeling like your boundaries aren't being respected. Would either of you like to go first?
No preference. What about you?
I can go, sure.
Yeah, it's
Hello?
ready.
It's all good. It's all good. I've been fortunate enough to be in this community for over a decade, and not even just here in the Bay, but I've seen other communities as well outside of here. And one of the key things that I feel has been medicinal is when I felt held and when I felt other people were held, and just there was no expectations. It was simply an exploration of your movement, of your story that you're trying to convey. Even if you don't have complete sentences and you're just trying to figure it out because you're processing. There have been a few events that I felt really brought together people in a really loving and caring way when it was just a celebration. And when I saw this question, one of the first events that I really felt that was, we know that gentrification has hit the Bay Area very hard for over a decade. And there was a community practice spot named Cellspace that was legendary in San Francisco. And it had been around for at least minimum of 16 years as a breaking practice spot, but it also held community events from local community dance troupes. There was an Aztec dance troupe, danza group there. They've hosted a lot of programs there for the youth during the summer and during the school year. And unfortunately, because of gentrification, the building got bought out. That whole block got bought out. And so someone from the community decided to take the reins and do a one last goodbye jam, and it was called Celebrate. And I participated. It was a competition format, yes, where it was a breaking component and an open styles component. But it was the first time that I truly felt that people really came together because it was honoring all of the stories that were held in this building. And I think when it's those moments when you're celebrating the memories, when you're honoring who came through those doors and who shared their story and shared their art form, it was one of the most empowering and supportive events because everybody was grieving over the loss of this space. It was known all over the world. And so I was fortunate to even start out there in that space when I first got into dance. So it was medicinal because even though it was a competition, it did not feel like that at all. Everybody came in all of those ciphers and just shared, they exchanged. I personally didn't feel any ego, and it was honestly one of the most beautiful and healing events that I've been to. And I wanted to share that because I think that there's some younger folks here that may not know about that space, and how part of the reason why there may be a struggle in finding spaces is because we lose these spaces because of gentrification. And that's why I really wanted to touch base on that specific event. So those are the things that I feel have been medicinal, is when you're feeling held, when there's a celebration, when there's no judgment, and it's literally folks coming together for a bigger cause outside of themselves.
Thank you. You were just reminding me about the last Digs Deeper at City Dance. John, I think you performed at that one, and maybe a couple other folks, and it was during Pride weekend, and it was like the last digs we were going to have at City Dance. It was just the same weekend that they were about to lose the original space. So yeah, just remembering that right now and how like medicinal it was, and yeah, how, you know, kind of what we're doing right now, how important it is to be in community in a held way when we're experiencing loss, which is ongoing. Yay, human lives! So fun and complicated. John, when has community been medicinal for you?
The moments I can think of are kind of building off what Farrah was talking about. It all comes down to the relationships, and the most impactful, healing, medicinal moments for me are when I am at an event and there are enough people there where we have a really healthy, safe relationship where the other can view me as who I am and where I'm at. And that transcends all these expectations, all the competitiveness that is a part of ballroom. But there's a way to still transcend that and see where someone's at and what they're bringing, and still recognize those moments of victory for that person. I can think of so many chosen family members who've helped me feel that way, and unfortunately, a number of them passed away during the pandemic. My performance later is dedicated to them. But when they help me feel seen and held at an event, it makes such a big difference. And there's always going to be some kind of mix of toxicity and medicinalness. I think it just depends on who's there. We bring our shit with us everywhere we go, and it just depends on what defenses people have, what fears they have, what trigger cues line up enough with the threats that their nervous systems learn to identify and anticipate. It's bound to happen to some degree, but the people who don't lead with that and don't try to make me feel like I need to be in a box somehow, those are some of the most impactful moments. Yeah.
Thank you, John. Yeah, you're making me think of like two potential like helpful things for like the challenges that we've expressed of one, like building, like having relationships in a community means we have to hang out outside of like a party where we're just dancing. You know, because I love to get down. But that's something I'm noticing in this conversation is the importance of that. And also, I would say one thing I notice in any community or special interest community recreational activities is, you know, the very easy potential for that baggage from childhood of like clickiness, you know? And I notice particularly between like dancers and non-dancers that sometimes dancers can be mad cliquey and really like dominate the space in a way that isn't inviting in people who are also there for the music and want to get free and express. And so I hold a hope for like all dancers that we can like also dance with the people who are there maybe not in the ciphers. Cause I notice I have fallen prey to that of like, oh, I know these people, they're dancing like as big as I'm dancing because I want to dance big, you know, but there are other people dancing. Why am I not introducing myself to them? Why am I not getting to know them? I've noticed that in myself. So I think that would be really beautiful and completely demolishing even this whole concept of like dancer or non-dancer, because ultimately it's about a relationship to the music. So thank you for my rant. I'm also just noticing, Pita, that you're sitting back here and I don't know how this happened. You're a part of this panel. Let's like scooch it. Hold on. Oh, you don't want to?
No, actually, I initially thought about that, and then I just kind of sat where I was at, and I'm kind of realizing that I actually appreciate like just being at the back. And one of those things is like, metaphorically speaking, like cis men don't always have to be at the table. And I think that's kind of like something that where I'm kind of like, always trying to be mindful of the spaces that I occupy and how I occupy them. And especially because, I just didn't really want like, while I do hold some marginalized identities, there are like other identities that I hold that have privilege. And I didn't want other people to literally once again make space for somebody like me to be at a table, and I just didn't want to feel like I was entitled to that. And I actually appreciate just kind of like being back here on purpose. So please don't move. I'm gonna hand it back to you so you can transition to the next.
Thank you, sweetheart. I also am really grateful that Pita is sitting behind me, because I have a lot of anxiety due to my brain style, and when the first time I like DJ'd at Days Like This Oakland on Friday, like a couple of weeks ago, which was like a really big moment for me because it was my dream to do that, and a lot of people here like supported that to happen and came out and danced. But Pita was like standing behind me like the whole time, and just like he has a very grounding, energetic presence. I don't know if anyone's noticed that, but just like yes. So thank you. I have a question for you. So for folks who don't know, Pita is a peer mentor at an eating disorder treatment facility, and we geek out a lot about psychology because unfortunately that's what happens when you're in relationship with a therapist. I do think there should be a support group for people of partners of therapists. If you need that, let me know. I'll link people up. Because it is real. But anyways, I was wondering, you as a peer mentor at an eating disorder treatment center, with your gender expression and identity, can you speak to bigorexia? Because I have eating disorder history. That's what got me into becoming a therapist. That's what started No Mirror Movement. We wanted to get out of the mirror and back into our bodies. But there's definitely a lot of stereotypes that it's like white women, thin, and that it's like anorexia is the only thing. And one of the reasons I've had to step away from any kind of movement activity-based community or space or following people on Instagram is folks' relationship to exercise, specifically, because I had exercise bulimia, which a lot of people don't know what that is, but it's you do way too much exercise, and there's certain thoughts that go along with it. But I think bigorexia, I didn't even know that term. And I like specialize in eating disorders. So I was wondering you, Pita, if you could share about that concept and how you see it impacting men and trans men and anyone who is wanting this idealized body of like bigger, stronger, etc.
So bigorexia basically is this need to gain and like extremely large amount of muscle mass, basically just for aesthetics. And this is something that has been a growing thing, especially like obviously anybody. It's not necessarily limited to any one gender, but it is definitely more prevalent within male bodies, and especially like a big part of that is just if you think about social media and a lot of the male bodies that you see, especially like within fitness and the fit expo culture, they've been getting like bigger and like just these really, I don't know, I think like a perfect example for me is like The Rock. And there's a lot of youth that I have as like my patients that I see, where they reference him or they reference a lot of other people, and they just have this relationship to their body where like they might want to gain weight, which is also sometimes a barrier to them getting the treatment that they need, but they're doing it in a way where they want to gain this muscle mass, and it's purely like, it's not necessarily around like getting stronger, although that might be like an indirect result of like all of this working out, but it's also more like just kind of this aesthetic and how they look, which is unfortunate because there's a lot of other things that kind of play into the perpetuation of bigorexia, which is most commonly more known as muscle dysmorphia. But, you know, especially when we have a lot of these internalized fat phobia and internalized diet culture where, you know, people can kind of get away with working out more. I'm like, oh, bro, it's for my health. Like, I'm just trying to, like, you know. And then, you know, we have a lot of stuff that's kind of built into our language that can feel very affirming, where we're like, hey, what's up, big guy? Hey, oh, big guy over there. And, you know, that, like, as a cis man, like, you know, it's kind of like, it's like your hype. It feels good. And so there's a lot of these subtle ways that we kind of keep this going. And I think the best example that I could probably give to you in terms of, like, one of the ways that culture kind of, like, keeps us going is if you think about action figures for that are targeted at, like, boys, and, like, they're superhero action figures. So the superhero action figures that we used to have, like, back in the 60s, the 70s, you know, I'm thinking of, like, Adam West and that kind of Batman and that kind of build. And so, you know, it's kind of like what most people would say is average today. But if you're looking at action figures today of, like, Batman, of Aquaman, like, not even just, like, the actors, but just the action figures themselves, they are, like, so, like, ridiculous, like, and in terms of, like, how, like, shredded they are and, like, the muscle tone. And there's a lot of people that try to attain this, which is just not really realistic for people that don't have the income, like The Rock, don't have the time to be able to, like, literally dedicate your whole day and your whole diet and have people, like, make food for you and, like, all of these plans to you know, have that be achievable. And it's very, like, a great, like, segue for people to become, like, dissociated with their bodies and have all of these, like, different values attached to how they see themselves, especially because, yeah, there's obviously a lot of factors like pretty privilege, a lot of, like, reinforcing statements that we see. It's like, oh, bro, you've been doing something, man. You've, like, look at you, like, and it's just a lot of, yeah, just these ways that we reinforce bigorexia.
Yes, thank you so much. I am in this moment thinking about how it's so important for people to know mental health concepts. I feel like that's literally coming up in, like, all of our answers and questions. So just noting that, Pita, again, wondering if, you know, we've talked a little bit about in our conversations around dance spaces, music spaces, the challenges that arise for folks at the margin, especially those folks with marginalized gender identities, the misogyny, you know, that whole thing. I was wondering if you could speak about survival mode and how it impacts men, folks who are male presenting or have been socialized as men or boys, how it impacts their embodiment of misogyny. So to repeat, survival mode, and how does it impact men in terms of how they embody misogyny? How they might.
How they might, okay. So I'm going to try my best to remember some of the stuff that this question arose from when we had an earlier conversation, but I'll just kind of lean into knowing that what will come out is what's meant to come out right now. So basically, what I'm thinking about is just in terms of in industrialized countries like the U.S., we are able to challenge some of these ways that we imagine certain identities and toxic masculinity, and we're able to kind of challenge these things. And it's kind of hard to do that if you don't have the space to do that. So one of the things that I always kind of hear is like, there's like a lot of misogyny in this country or that country. And a lot of those countries are developing countries. And when, like, quote unquote, developing countries. And so a lot of the people that are living in those countries are in survival mode. And, you know, when you're in kind of like survival mode, there is a lot of roles that you play that do fall into those traditional roles that we have historically attributed to certain genders, and so there's just like that's why certain people feel like when they go to these countries they have to be mindful. There's a lot of friends that I have here that they're like, yeah, but when I go home I have to like make sure like I have to be careful because the men there are just like they're still doing the shit that we like we don't have to deal with over here. And so one of the reflections that I had was that part of being able to have those reflections is definitely the privilege of education and all of the other things that kind of come with being here in the States that not everybody is afforded, but at least at a basic level people will have certain accommodations which allows some of these conversations to have a place to be had, and time for those topics to be explored. And and with those come being able to process and to learn and to be able to challenge, which some of these depending on your socioeconomic status isn't able to happen because you're just in survival mode.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for bringing in just like the reality of how much we can like grow or change or heal based on like what our access to resources is. And just noticing that. With this topic of misogyny, I don't know if anyone agrees with this, but I personally feel like narcissistic behaviors and narcissism, obviously there's differences between those things. I see it in some ways inherently embedded in the like larger cultural vibe and actions as it relates to misogyny. And John, I know your experience as a licensed psychotherapist is a lot around the intersections of trauma as well as personality disorders, which one includes narcissistic personality disorder. I notice nowadays a lot of people are calling everyone a narcissist, and that's like a pretty big statement. It is like a diagnosable. There's a lot of issues with the DSM and the medical establishment. That narcissistic piece, like we all have that narcissistic part of ourselves. We all have light and shadow. We all can enact out harm and be harmed. Like that is what it is to be human. And I actually learned about all this from John on this podcast that they were on. So check it out. But Trauma Party. And I see a lot of that behavior kind of happening in community spaces, particularly my experiences in the dance community. And when I do quotations, it's because I really feel like it's the cis hetero dance community. Just to be real about it. And I'm wondering if you could speak about, as a clinician with this sort of like amorphous dance community that really feels like it's the cis hetero dominated community, how do you see cultural narcissism? Just like how, cultural narcissism playing out in these spaces, and what dancers and spectators and organizers, as well as people taking classes, having that power differential between mentor and mentee, or this is the person that wins all of the battles, and so we're gonna pedestal them. And so can you speak about cultural narcissism and how you see it playing out in dance spaces?
Yeah, totally. It's such a big topic. I really appreciate what you said, that we all have narcissism in us, because that's a really important point to make. There's also a distinguishing, I don't know if that's a word. It is now. There's a difference between healthy narcissism and not healthy narcissism. So I'll kind of expand a little bit. Healthy narcissism can really get us through tough times. It's kind of like, and I think dancers to a degree kind of need some of this. It's the ability to feel entitled in certain spaces based on how hard you've worked, the ability to derive joy in your skills. And it's healthy when it's aligned with the greater good and when there's still empathy. But we all have moments where we can kind of step into that space of being like, yeah, I deserve a seat at this table. Like, I've really worked for this. It gets unhealthy when it's about exclusion and control and manipulation. And I think things to look out for are so much of what you said, Solasta, about that power differential. If you start to feel like your role is becoming more and more mainly to prop up someone else's self-esteem, when it really seems fragile, they might have a lot of bravado, but really underneath it's a lot of fragility because they need that constant propping up. The propping up is called narcissistic supply. When you feel like you're constantly being asked to give narcissistic supply and it's really not a reciprocal kind of relationship or dynamic, that's when it's important to notice it. And were there more questions?
Thank you. For dancers or anyone, students, people who are in relationship with a mentor or a teacher, in whatever context that is, but particularly in dance and music, since that's what we're here doing today. We're gonna dance soon. Can you speak to what should people look out like? If there's anything else to look out for in terms of like behaviors or even like examples of when you might start to even notice in your body, like, oh, like, is this a reciprocal relationship, or am I being taken advantage of, or am I being gaslit, or am I being I recently had an experience of being pulled out of an event because I was seen as self-serving by reaching out to people who are already involved in it and confirming through them. And then, sorry, it's still really activating. I have had experiences in the Bay Area dance community multiple times with cis men who are organizing events or who are teaching or holding a space where there are certain behaviors that are happening. A lot of fragility, and I always kind of assumed it was more like male fragility or sometimes white fragility, and I'm now learning through you that the ability to give narcissistic supply as an empath, as an autistic person, as a neuroqueer person is very, very easy. And I've fallen into it many, many, many times. And we have all on this panel spoken about how, we're sensitive beings, shy, sensitive, maybe feel things or whatever. So what advice do you have to people to check in with themselves, to kind of reality check themselves about what is happening in this dynamic with this person and how should I respond? Because I definitely could have responded different.
Thanks for sharing. I think there are a lot of dynamics that can be really indicative of this type of thing playing out. Kind of generally, I think one thing you can look out for is when you feel like there's a long pattern that's being established where there is a lot of fear instilled about not asserting your own needs because it might upset the other person, and there's a lot of eggshell walking. Because relationships are supposed to be about give and take. And if it feels like it's just so one-sided and the moment you assert your needs or make an ask, you are gonna get excluded, smeared. That is a really classic sign. We talked a lot about gaslighting. When you start to feel like, wait, this isn't how I'm understanding this playing out, but all of a sudden there's this big narrative being constructed about me now. That's something to really look out for. I would say it's really important to have people in your corner who can be this reflection, this mirror for you to be like, no, I was there, I saw what happened, you're not the one distorting things. I think that is so grounding when the narrative can get really spun out of control. And I think one of the vulnerabilities that we can all kind of check in with ourselves about is that tendency to give narcissistic supply is really, really tempting when the other person has a lot of status, is really revered in the community. People who have grown up learning to take care of others, to attend to the needs of others, sometimes at the expense of our own needs, can be especially vulnerable to playing into that kind of dynamic because it feels so familiar. And oftentimes people who have a part of them that learn to be caretaking, people-pleasing, might also have trouble with boundaries. And that's where it gets really easy to believe I'm supposed to keep giving and giving and giving. Sometimes there can be this underlying fear of if I stop giving and giving, I'm gonna lose the limelight that this powerful person is giving me. And that can be really scary and hard. But if you find yourself in that kind of dynamic where there is such fear and manipulation, then that's really something to look out for. I would say it's really important to find those people whose perspectives you trust, especially people who have also seen the situations play out and can kind of corroborate your point of view. If you feel like you've been really, really harmed by narcissistic abuse or behaviors, I think it's super important to work with a trauma-informed therapist. Let's see. There was something I kind of wanted to touch on too about the narcissistic, cultural narcissism. I also wanted to say, kind of building off what I said earlier, that we all have these tendencies in us. There's also such a thing as healthy narcissism. What I really wanted to touch on is that our culture really enables this and reinforces it. You know, social media is a classic example. You know, it really feeds our narcissism. But when you start to see that it's about excluding others, making others feel diminished, controlling the narratives about other people to get them canceled or whatever, that's when it takes a turn into that unhealthy territory.
Oh, wow. I am just so grateful for you, so grateful for every single person on this panel. This has been a dream of mine for, a while. And part of that dream being that one thing I notice, and it's not specific to dance community spaces, but, you know, any space, that folks who do have more clout or power or, you know, connections in a community and are, you know, throwing panels or throwing events, I have noticed that queer people, gender expansive people, disabled people don't really get asked to share their resources, or like the Bay dance community is notorious for doing events at the exact same time and not communicating with each other. And this weekend is an example of that. There's literally a community panel going on at the same time as this. And that's beautiful. People need to be having conversations. It's really important that we're having these conversations. And I hold a hope and a dream that folks who's are at those margins with multiple intersections are being sought out by people organizing large-scale events and centering their experiences and stories. If we're especially talking about issues of harm or healing, another thing I notice in events in dance specifically are like, where it's good that people are talking about mental health, and like there are mental health clinicians who are dancers. And like, why are those clinicians not being asked to consult with event organizers? It's a huge missed opportunity in terms of community building and strengthening and safety for everyone. So I'm just really grateful that this got to happen and that all of you are here witnessing. This is just the beginning of many conversations, because this is not a one-stop shop, which also tends to happen with issues of harm and issues of experiences of intersectionality and oppression and different ways of thinking. And Karla was giving me a pep talk yesterday when I was freaking the fuck out about all of this happening. And she, mentioned, this is planting the seed. So there are so many people in this audience, like right now, who have so much to offer and share on all of these things. So I'm just really excited to hear more people's stories and come together more through these perspectives. So yay, Rainbow Connection Club and human beings who are magical. Yes. Yes. Wow. Let's all get up for a second if you're sitting and that's accessible to you and feels good, or lie down on the ground, whatever feels good to you. But that was like a lot of wisdom and a lot of memories. So I want to honor that right now. So we're going to do one of my favorite activities from No Mirror Movement. That I had a big chosen family for myself of dancers. Many are here today. We're kind of like laying No Mirror Movement to rest. It's not like it dies right now, but it's like it's coming to an end as a dance collective. We're not rehearsing anymore, so it's been a huge part of my life and community. And one of our practices whenever we start rehearsals are these 6 breath sequences, and it's really to help calm the body, feel into the ground, release anything that needs to get out of the space, reset the energy, and set some intentions, because we got a lot of other fun to have. So let's do this. You can follow along, sitting, lying down, however is accessible to you. I'm going to do it with one arm, but I would be using both of my arms typically. Like Gunny over here. Thank you. Awesome. So, feet, whatever distance apart feels comfortable. Take your arms out, inhale out and up. And as you inhale, just notice what's in your space right now, particularly anything that's feeling maybe denser or heavier, or maybe your mind was going kind of fast, or things came up. Just honor them for a moment. Okay, yes, you're here. It's there. This makes sense. And then gently forward fold over. Send that energy down into the land. Let it absorb it up and transmute it into magic. Let it out. You might want to shake your head or neck or hands. Inhale, bring your arms out, reaching out forward in front of you, reaching all the way up to the sky. And as you do, ask yourself, what do I need right now? One word. Is it trust, love, breath, food? Yes, nourish yourself. What do you need right now? And then exhale, look at that need right in front of you, both hands stretched out, and just like, yes, like self-validating. As we just learned, we can gaslight ourselves sometimes. So this is my need. Beautiful. Inhale, bring it in closer towards your chest, kind of like feel into it. Ooh, maybe it's fuzzy, maybe it's warm, maybe it's a little chilly. And then exhale, send it into your heart. Yeah, so we're just gonna do that a couple more times. Inhale out, just acknowledging what's here, anything in your space. And then send down what you don't want in your space, down into the earth. Let it go. Inhale, reach the arms out, coming up above you. What do I need in this moment? Exhale, look at it in front of you. Inhale, bring it in. Exhale, send it into the heart, into the body. We're going to do this 2 more times, your own pace, your own inner knowing. Let's go. One more time. Yes, and just feel into that goodness right now. Wherever that feeling is, so grateful for everyone here. See if you can feel your feet on the ground. Maybe you're swaying like a tree. Ooh, in the wind. And then just take a look around, orient yourself to this fucking incredible space. Like, what? All this gorgeous art. Kehlani is on the wall. There's a rose. It's just, everyone looks fabulous. Like, really so beautiful. Beautiful sun in the sky. Thank you all so much. Orienting everyone else to the space as DJ Liz gets our music going for us. Yes, it's happening. Let's discharge that energy. Let it out. We just grounded. Let's discharge.